One of the senior partners said, Todd, we get a lot of cases that involve farming and agriculture, and it'd be great if you wanted to be involved in those and could help us out with farming cases. And the light bulb went off in my head at that point that, hey, I can connect my rural upbringing on a farm to my legal practice.
Hello and welcome to Illinois Corn TV. I am Laura Gentry. I am the Director of Water Quality Science at Illinois Corn Growers Association. And today I am talking with Todd Janzen, who is the founder of Jansen Schroeder Agricultural Law. And he is also the founder and has established Ag Data Transparent. And that's what we're here to talk to Todd about today. So Todd, you're an agricultural lawyer and you're based out of Indianapolis, the founder of a law firm, and you work exclusively with farmers, pretty much. Is that right?
Yeah, mostly with farmers. It's all agriculture. For many years, I was a lawyer at a bigger firm, and then in 2015, I went out with another law partner and established this law firm because we wanted to focus just on agriculture. So our clients are mostly farmers, but also some small agribusinesses and some ag tech companies too.
We have so much data. I mean, farmers today are really kind of swimming in data many times. The way we use it is really quite different, but our agricultural equipment is collecting data on every acre that we farm, and our yield monitors know field by field what we're harvesting, and our application records are tracking our fertilizer application rates and our timing, our planters are logging our seeding populations, and all of that data. It's out there and it exists. And also, farmers sign so many contracts, and often they're very long, lengthy contracts. Very few are pleasant to read, and they're for almost every service that farmers, that they can't do 100% independently. And these are for services that collect data on our farms as well. So, how would you say, before we get into what Ag Data Transparent is, how have you seen the importance of agricultural data change, over time in the 10 or 11 years that you've been in the business of, being really an expert in agricultural data?
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. I think that originally, when all these ag data platforms came onto the market, the promise was really that we were going to see like leapfrogs and benchmarking, right? And farmers were going to figure out, oh, I'm not doing something the way someone else is, and so it's hurting my yield in this part of my field. And I think that was the big promise initially. And I think some of that has turned out to be true, but for the most part, I think we're at a different place today, 10 years later, where the uses for ag data have evolved, and we're finding out that it's not necessarily the benchmarking that is what drives a lot of these platforms, but instead it's things like traceability, and can I do something to differentiate my crop from someone else's based upon how I grew it and how I can verify that with data. um, and those other issues are out there on the horizon too, like what does all this AI mean for data collection, and how's that going to impact farmers, and how's their data going to be used to train these AI models. So there are new issues on the horizon, but it's definitely changed over the last 10 years.
It really has. It's changed so much. Our concerns have changed. I mean, I wouldn't say any of our old concerns have just totally gone away, would you?
No, no, I think privacy was always the big one, right? And that's
Mhm.
just as big today with the advent of AI as it was 10 years ago. And we were probably more worried about things like unfair competition from data collection, right? Or antitrust issues.
Mhm. Mhm. One thing I've often said, and I believe I'd like to hear. I've never run this one by you. I often say, owning data it matters. Farmers often say, who owns the data? Do I own the data? I own my data. I have told plenty of farmers, it doesn't really matter who owns your data. It matters who has the right to use your data. Do you agree with that as a lawyer, or is that
Yes, I
some
do for the
caveat
most
there?
part. I'd say like I think the data ownership question is still important from the standpoint of in a contract, it's a good way to establish like a baseline to say right away, we believe the farmer owns the data, and therefore, in order to use it, you need to give us a license as that company. And so it can be a good way to sort of establish that baseline, and then you go from there and, still respect the farmer's ownership rights at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk for a minute then about ag data transparent, and just tell us, what is ag data transparent?
Yeah, so at its core, it is a nonprofit corporation, and it was started about 10 years ago as well. And it really grew out of a lot of farmer concerns about ag data privacy and collection of data from farmers. And American Farm Bureau spearheaded a set of roundtable discussions about 10 years ago to say, can we come up with a set of ground rules for how data should be collected and used from farms? And out of that came a set of core principles. And then once those were published, Farm Bureau said, let's get everyone to sign on to these. And most companies did sign on to them and said, we're going to implement those. But then it became obvious that it's one thing to say we're going to implement certain principles, it's another thing to actually put them into your contracts. And so what happened next was this Ag Data Transparent organization was formed, and it was designed to create a tool to really look at these contracts that farmers are being asked to sign and say, are they in compliance with these core principles? And are companies doing with data what they say they're doing on the marketing side of things?
Tell me, how many members do we have now in ADT? And can you give us a couple of examples? I know there's some that everybody knows.
Yeah. Yeah. There have been over 50 companies have been through this certification process to date. And I believe we have over 30 active members today because every year you're required to renew your membership and you renew your statement where you're saying that your contracts are in compliance with these criteria. And so we've lost a few over the years where we've had companies merge. Like Granular was one that existed, came out of Silicon Valley, and then was merged into Corteva, and then actually now is part of Traction Ag. And so Granular was an ADT member, and Traction Ag is an ADT member. And so, those are a couple examples. On the wider or the larger side of things, we've also had John Deere and its John Deere Ops Center go through the certification process, and even FieldView, which is a Bayer platform, has also been through that certification process. But it runs the gamut from everything from a small tech startup that maybe has 10 employees to a John Deere or a Bayer that has hundreds of thousands of employees.
And the cost, there's a small cost associated with it because it's a time for to go through the contracts and everything like that. But I mean, it really is. It's a not for profit. It's a very minimal price, and the price is a sort of a sliding scale depending on the size of the organization. Isn't that right? And
That's right. Yep. The startups just pay a small fee, 2,500, and then the larger companies pay 7,500. But yeah, and I should mention too that the Ag Data Transparent Organization is a nonprofit that's overseen by farm organizations. And so, like National Corn Growers has a seat on the board, American Soybean Association, and then also um, the commodity groups for sorghum and for wheat, and National Farmers Union and American Farm Bureau. So it's a very broad spectrum of U.S. agriculture. And now we even have the national or no, the Canadian Federation of Agriculture as well involved. So north of the border, ADT is also doing its
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, it really is. Well, we should mention I'm the president now, just since this year,
Yes,
but
great.
it's just been a great organization. Have just been on the board for a couple of years, and very good group of folks that are very. Everyone there is, has a sincere interest in making sure farmers are making good decisions around ag data contracts, and I'd say they're all just the best players. They're really good players, and we love to see um, when the certification is being sort of amplified out there, like when a company is ag data certified, ag data transparent certified, it really means that something. It doesn't necessarily, we should be really clear about this. It doesn't necessarily mean that, they're not doing, they're doing great things with it just means they're very clear about how they use the data. Isn't that true? I mean, it's really about simple contracts and being just really transparent about ownership and control of the data. The fundamental belief that farmers own information that originates from their farming operations. It's
Hmm.
it's those core beliefs. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not saying that it doesn't restrict really what's being done with data, but it really does mean about transparency and good, clear contracts.
Yes,
Are
it's
there
all
other
about
pieces to that?
transparency. I think very early on, there were a lot of strong opinions in the boardroom about this is the correct answer. This is the only way we should allow companies to answer this question. But the pushback ended up becoming that, well, we don't want to pick winners and losers here, right? We want to establish what are the fair rules, and it's all about the transparency. And so a good example where you could contrast that would be in the early days when Bex Hybrids released its farm server platform, which was a data analytics record keeping platform. It was very siloed in that data would be stored there by a farmer, and they would totally decide if that data would go anywhere else, right? Otherwise, it would just stay in that silo. Um, Contrast that to Farmers Business Network, which was another early adopter of ADT. And it was a benchmarking platform and designed so that farmers could absolutely compare with what other farmers were doing. And so everyone knew that, I think, going into these two. And so that's what ADT was all about, was to say, let's make sure that it's clear when you sign up what you're signing up for, not that one is right and one is wrong. Let the farmer decide that.
Right. And there's so many different things we can do with data. And like in the example you just gave, the way we specialize and use that, there's an almost endless number of ways that farm data can be used to help farmers, make good decisions and to give them confidence about different practices,
Mhm.
help them just decide, what's best for them and how to respond to certain, whether it's a market fluctuation or whether it's weather or other conditions, how they can make good decisions. But all of that requires contracts. Every piece of that. I mean, unless a farmer is doing something just 100% independently, they're signing some kind of a contract, and those contracts. This is just a way to give farmers a lot of confidence that that the contract it stands up against these core principles, and so we just
Yeah,
think it's pretty
yeah.
great.
And I know you don't love contracts, Laura. I love
I don't.
contracts, right?
We
I'm a
found our
lawyer.
places in the world, Todd.
Yeah, the contracts are great, but I know farmers don't necessarily wanna read a data contract, right? So, that's what that's why ADT is so great. They can go to the ADT website and they can see how did a company answer this question about how they use data, right? And they can just read that and they don't have to read the whole contract. They still can and they still should. I won't tell anyone to sign something without reading it, but if they wanna take a shortcut, ADT is there to provide that. So hopefully that helps with understanding.
We think it's a great, it's a great step, and every farmer should look for that ADT certification. And we have encouraged different companies to look into getting ADT certified. We think that it's that important. Um, the last thing I wanted to ask you about is just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you did grow up on a farm, so I want to know a little bit more about your connection to agriculture and what made you want to, serve as, the board president, the founder of ADT. Just tell us all of that.
Yeah. Well, I'd say you're absolutely right. I grew up on a farm in South Central Kansas, and we were really an operation designed around beef cattle. And so that meant there was a lot of grain and forage production, a lot of hay production. And so I spent my childhood driving a swather, baling hay. And we even started a custom business for other farmers in the area, and I really loved working on a farm. I loved, being in a rural part of the country. It was a great place to grow up. After I went to law school, fast forward a few years, the very first job that I was working at was an environmental law firm. And environmental law isn't necessarily what people think. It's not about saving whales or hugging trees, but it's about uh, solving problems around pollution. And so, um, in my interview, one of the senior partners said, Todd, we get a lot of cases that involve farming and agriculture, and it'd be great if you wanted to be involved in those and could help us out with farming cases. And the light bulb went off in my head at that point, and this was, over 20 years ago, that, hey, I can connect my rural upbringing on a farm to my legal practice. And so, really from day one, I decided I was going to be an ag lawyer and I was going to make that my focus. And fortunately or unfortunately for those farmers, there were plenty of issues to deal with in my younger years as a lawyer when I was cutting my teeth and learning the ropes. And so I got a lot of experience in ag law. And then at some point, maybe 10 years later, that's when we started to see a lot of the data collection from farmers, um, from these new platforms and the existing companies. And so that's how I ended up in that space. Was I was already an ag lawyer, and here were all these new companies out there looking for somebody who used to working with farmers to help them with their contracts. So it all worked out very well for me.
Not to be corny, it's our favorite segment. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Every week we end our interviews with a not to be corny joke. I've got two in case you get the answer to the
All
first one
right.
right.
Okay.
Okay. Why did the corn farmer hire an agricultural lawyer to review his data contract?
Oh, I think I know. He was cornfused.
Oh, that's such a good answer. That's not what I came up with. My answer was he didn't want there to be a kernel of doubt. Both are terrible, but, relevant.
Oh man.
All right. All right. Hey, I don't think I've ever done this where somebody came up with the right answer, like an answer.
Okay.
That's really
There we
good.
go.
Nice job, Todd.
Well, you can
You're
use
a
it in the next
crackerjack
one.
lawyer, I bet. All right. Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap.
Thank you so much, Todd. Really appreciate you being on the show.